Hello，你好，Welcome back，欢迎回来 to Wisdom Wednesday with Johnny Tiger. Date is May 24th, 2023. Now this is going to be a fun, funny, and somewhat maybe a little bit controversial episode. We are going to be talking about some of the historical Chinese figures, some of the more famous examples of Chinese people afraid, scared uh, of their wives, aka being pussy whipped. Now, this right off the bat can be quite surprising because most of us have this idea that throughout its long history, thousands of years, Chinese people have always been very chauvinistic and a patriarch kind of society. Women didn't have authority, women didn't have power, and women were abused and used and traded like slaves and all that stuff. Now, while some of that might have been true, right? Some of that might have been true. Uh, there was another set of Chinese culture where men not only respected women but feared their wives. And we are not even talking about just the peasants and the slaves and the low lives and low tier society. Today I'm going to tell you of some of the most influential people that were known throughout history that have been found historically accurate, have historically factually proven that were pussy whipped in some of the funniest manner. Now, some people will say that the term pussy whipped is a derogative term all on its own, right? When you tell someone they're pussy whipped, it's like a big insult. Uh, and in fact, I'll tell you this: when I was younger, when I was in my teenage years and 20s, maybe to mid 20s, if you tell me, Johnny, you're scared of your girlfriend, you're pussy whipped, I would get really offended. I would be really mad, and I would argue with you. I would try to find all kind of ways to prove to you that no, I'm not afraid of her, and so on and so on. But then, as age settled onto my shoulder, as I got older, my hair got more gray, I became more wise, and now I no longer think of it as an insult. If you ask me, if you tell me, Johnny, you're pussy whip, I say, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. I'm pussy whip because you know what? Because happy wife means happy life. Happy girlfriend means happy life as well. So why wouldn't I be pussy whipped? Of course I'm pussy whipped because I want my life to be trouble free. I want a peaceful, comfortable existence without the drama and the arguing and all that stuff. So of course I'm pussy whipped. You're totally right. Okay, I'm proud of it too. I don't mind telling you I'm pussy whipped. I'm fine with that. So maybe that's just like one of those things that come with age, uh, and all that stuff. It come with acceptance. Okay, as a lot of us eventually have to come to the point where we realize that, yeah, you know what? It's okay to be a coward. It's okay to be a pussy, as long as we can keep the peace. That's fine. Pussy whipped in Mandarin is generally called pa lao po. Pa, pa means scared, afraid of. Lao po means old lady, aka wife, girlfriend. Pa lao po means scared of your wife. Again, an interesting trend in especially China nowadays is while in the old days there were a lot of talks about I'm not scared of my wife. If my wife dared to raise her voice, I beat her up and so on and so on, kick her out of the house. She would have to go beg on the street. She wouldn't I wouldn't leave her anything. Yeah, this was the kind of attitude people would have maybe back in the 60s, maybe back in the 70s. But nowadays, women actually enjoyed an immense amount of success and respect in China. So more and more, if you pay attention to comedies and talk shows and dramas from the past 20 years that came out of China, you will see that a lot of men will talk about how much they 怕老婆, how much they're afraid of their wife, how much their wife if their wife tells them to be home by 10, they'll be home by 9:30. If their wife tells them to go get groceries, they be out the door without argument. If their wife asks them to hand over their entire paycheck, they do it without a blink of the eye. This is kind of an interesting and refreshing and somewhat disturbing trend that's going on in the Chinese culture nowadays. Even way back in the Song Dynasty in China, there was a very famous poem written by the fantastic and popular poet Xu Dongpo. Xu Dongpo he wrote a poem describing a phrase that was used in the poem is called the lioness of East River, 河东狮吼, the roar of the lioness of East River. And this has been so well received and enjoyed throughout the centuries. And even nowadays, this is still a famous idiom that Chinese people will say if they hear someone with a loud voice or someone who make loud noise, they will say, "Oh, watch that 河东狮吼, watch that lion roar." From East River. And there has been movies and films and theaters and plays written about this. And this traces back to one time when Xu Dongpo went to a friend of his party. Now, this friend of Xu is another poet, another scholar. Now, back then, during the Song Dynasty, a lot of scholars they didn't really have much to do every day other than study and party. Okay, it was like kind of like the Renaissance in Europe, where you spend your days socializing, having sex, making children, uh, painting and writing poetry and playing music and having more parties and so on and so on. So the poets and scholars during the Song Dynasty, they were somewhat like that. So Shu went to a party hosted by one of his scholar friends, and the story went that this friend had a very fearsome wife, very bad-tempered, very scary. So uh, it was customary that back then, when people, especially scholars, were having their parties and they're drinking and dancing, they would have to hire some dancing girls. Not necessarily prostitute, but girls that would sing with them and dance with them and uh, pour their wine for them and serve food, stuff like that. So they would hire some of these women, but because this friend was so scared of his wife that he told her that he wasn't going to hire any of these women, that they were just a couple of friends getting together for a drink and nothing was going to happen. But when she was out and about, he told all his friends, "Okay, come on, my wife is out. Let's have a party." And then they brought in these beautiful dancing girls, and everybody's having a great time. And then suddenly the wife came home, and when she realized that there was a party going on, and there were these oh, like semi-naked beautiful women in her house, she lost her shit. She went to the one of the rooms and started smashing furnitures and breaking the glass and knocking on the wall and screaming at the top of her lungs, "Get the fuck out of my house!" And apparently, she was so scary that everyone left. So after that incident, Shu Dongpo went home and wrote a funny poem about his friend, making fun of his friend. And basically, in the poem, he talked about how this friend act like a scholar and a gentleman, and yet as soon as a lion roars from East River, his legs turned to jelly and he didn't dare to oppose his wife. So this was one of the very classic example of Chinese people, even thousands of years ago, being kind of pussy whipped. Now, one thing we want to make clear when it comes to people scared of their wife being pussy whipped is that not all pussy whipped are made equal. Okay, not everybody is pussy whipped for the same reason. Uh, we can summarize it and put it down to there's three different kinds of being pussy whipped. One is being pussy whipped because you're afraid of their force. You're afraid of their forces, their temperament, and what they can do. This is fear out of force. This is the first type of being pussy whipped. This also further, especially in the ancient days, were split into two separate sections. Fear because of the force of the resources of your wife, or fear because of your wife's own capability. We'll give a couple of examples to illustrate these type of being pussy whipped in Chinese history. Number one, we'll talk about being pussy whipped because of your wife's family and resources. The most famous example of a Chinese person who was pussy whipped because of how connected his wife was no less than an emperor himself. Right? We're talking about Sui Wendi, the Wen emperor of the Sui dynasty. Uh, Now, you would think that being an emperor means he's not scared of anybody, right? You think that being emperor, he can have any woman he wanted, right? Concubines and mistresses and handmaidens and all that stuff. Anything, anybody, anytime he wanted, right? Nope, not our dear Wen Emperor of Sui Dynasty. No, even though he was one of the greatest emperors of his time, he was deadly scared of offending his wife, Queen Dugu. Queen Dugu married uh, the emperor before he was even an emperor, when he was just a prince. He was 17, she was 14, and it was really just a marriage of convenience in the beginning. Those of you who pay attention to Game of Thrones and those kind of historical fantasy setting, you will recognize this is kind of similar. Okay, they didn't fall in love with each other. They married each other because, well, her family was very well connected. She had a very wealthy, very powerful family. Politically, they were very influential. They had connection with the military. They have a lot of money. But because they were not the bloodline of the royalty, so even though they were well connected, they couldn't get any further with their ambition. Uh, and here came this prince, Wen Di. Now, Wen Di obviously wanted to become emperor, but the problem was there were a lot of people that wanted him to not become emperor. He had siblings, cousins, brothers. There were a lot of situ- problem with the succession, right of succession, and people wanted to murder him and depose him and stuff like that. So he needed strong ally. So that's why we said this was a marriage of convenience between Queen Dugu and Wen Di, emperor, because he wanted help to become the emperor, and he couldn't become an emperor unless he had military backing and a lot of money and strong political alliance. So he married her, the daughter of such a family, and she married him because that's her family's ticket to finally become a royal family. So they were mutually using each other. That was the plan in the beginning. However, on their wedding night, keep in mind, at this point, Dougal Queen was only 14 and Wendy was 17, right? Uh, Dougal told him on their wedding night, forced him to swear a vow, to make a vow that for the rest of his life, he would not uh, be with another woman. Okay, so this was awkward for our young Wendy, right? Because obviously, especially when you're 17, this is a lot to ask for the rest of your life. God, I, I thought I'm going to be emperor. I mean, that's the whole point of being an emperor, so I can have any woman I want, and whenever I want. But because he needed her family's help to become emperor, he had no choice but to take such a vow, to swear that for the rest of his life he would be with no one else than Dougal Queen. After they were married, true to her promise to him, she used her family connection, brought in the military, and made him the emperor, allow him to take the throne and became the emperor. Even after Wendy became the Sui dynasty emperor, he was still very deadly scared of his wife because he knew that in his underlings there were spies everywhere. Oh, there were a lot of people that were working for her and her family, and his most trusted generals were from her family. Her families were the military. Her families were the financial ministries. So he couldn't afford to piss her off. So for most of his life, Sui Wendi and Dougal Queen ruled the dynasty, the kingdom together. Uh, it was definitely not a patriarchal situation because Dougal Queen actually had more say in most matters than Sui Wendi. If you want to know how bad it got for our poor Wendy Emperor, let me tell you about this one incident where he transgressed. Um, about 20 years after he became emperor, of course, by this time, he's getting pretty comfortable. He's getting pretty confident in himself, and he's been the emperor for 20 years, and maybe he started to forget or pretend that he forgot the vow he took when they got married, that he would not touch another woman. The story goes that there was this very beautiful young uh, maid in working in the palace, and one day when the emperor saw this maid, he just was head over heel. I mean, his wife is getting older, and obviously it's hard for him to really feel much for his wife because of how much she dominate their relationship because of all the power she had politically. So it's hard to love someone and really be attracted to someone when there's a big power trip like that, right? So our Wendy Emperor saw this maid and decided that, okay, you know what? Okay, whatever. I'm the emperor. I can do whatever I want. And he decided to uh, do some physical activity with this maid. Uh, Use your own imagination. I'm not going to go into too much details here. Suffice to say, he had some steamy romance going on with this maid, and pretty soon, Dougal Queen found out. So, uh, next time when her husband, when the emperor was in office. He was busy dealing with policies, signing papers. She had her handmaiden brought this maid to her chamber, and they beat this maid to death. By the time the emperor finished working that day, came back, he was presented with the corpse of this maid that he had an affair with. Oh, this really angered the emperor. He was mad. He was livid. He was like, what the hell? I am the emperor. I should be able to sleep with whoever I want without repercussion. You can't just kill people I like. I'm the emperor, right? Like, so he was mad. And what did he do? Some people will say, well, like if you piss off the emperor, they chop your head off. Uh-uh. Not our Wendy emperor. Our Wendy emperor was so scared of his wife that rather than throwing a temper tantrum and cuss her out or have her thrown in jail for murdering his uh, lovely maid, he jumped on a horse and ran away from the palace. Yeah, I'm not even joking. This was historically true. Like this actually happened. The emperor who ruled the entire kingdom, who could order anyone killed if they displeased him, didn't dare to raise his voice to the queen who just murdered his lovely young maid. He jumped on the horse and rode out of the palace and went straight toward the mountain. He basically ran away from home like a spoiled child. And his ministers and royal guard have to chase him for over 20 miles before they finally caught up to him and begged him to please, Your Majesty, will you please go back to the palace? We can't have an emperor run away from home. And when they caught up to him, the emperor sat down on the ground, started crying. And he was so sad. He said, what good am I? What kind of emperor am I if I'm so scared of my wife? There's no point to being an emperor if I can't even do whatever I like. If I can't even fall in love with someone without that, he used a swear word here. I'm not going to repeat that. If that woman, if I can't even stop that woman murdering whoever I want to sleep with, what good is it for me to be an emperor? He was so devastated. He sat down on the ground in the middle of the forest and cried while his ministers looked on helplessly. Long story short, he finally went back to the palace, and then as soon as he went back to the palace and saw his queen, Dugu Queen, what happened? He put his tears away. He wasn't crying. He wasn't mad. He didn't even dare to tell her that he was mad. The Dugu Queen was like, "Where did you go?" And the emperor was like, "Oh well, it's kind of stifling here. I just needed some exercise, so I decided to go right around." He didn't even dare let her know that he was pissed off because she murdered his maid. This was a classic example of an emperor or a person who was so pussy whipped, so scared of his wife because of the political connection she had. So in this case, the fear came from the wife's family connection and resources. Now, another kind of fear due to force was due to the wife's own capability rather than her family connection. And in this one, I can give you yet another super famous Chinese personage. In the case of General Qi Jiguang, if you have paid attention to our Wisdom Wednesday, then you might find this name, Qi Jiguang, very familiar. right? Because we just talked about Qi Ji Guang like 3 or 4 episodes ago when I talked about how the Chinese people were able to over to kick the butts of Japanese pirates despite the pirate having superior training and superior weapon. And that was led by General Qi Ji Guang when they threw the Japanese pirate out of China. Right? So Qi Ji Guang is one of the most famous Chinese generals, tacticians, warriors throughout Chinese history. And considering Chinese people have 5,000 years of history, that's a really tall hat, really big shoes for anyone to fill. Okay, so Qi Ji Guang is that person, one of the most famous Chinese generals of all time, and yet such a great warrior who stared death in the face and spat in the faces of Japanese samurais and pirates, faced down people wielding katana and trained to kill. Qi Ji Guang was deathly scared of his wife Wang. Qi Ji Guang's wife Wang was born in a martial household. For generations, they were warriors, and so without deviation, Wang, even though she was female, she was well trained from an early age. She grew up playing with swords and knives and spears and riding horses and shooting arrows and learning all kind of ways to mess someone up. Suffice to say, Wang was not shy about getting physical if whenever Qi Ji Guang would piss her off. And it happened quite often in the beginning of their marriage because Qi Ji Guang, being a warrior himself, obviously he had this idea that, yeah, okay, you are a warrior, I am a warrior, but you are female, I'm male, I'm your husband, so I should be able to tame you no matter how good you think you are. But every time Qi Ji Guang made this mistake, Wang would prove him wrong. Whenever they would have an argument, she would be the first one to throw the first punch, and she would be the last one standing. Right? And this got to the point where Qi Ji Guang learned to fear his wife. One of the story spoke of, Qi Ji Guang was so sick and tired of being scared and living in fear at home that he decided to relocate and move into the campground to live with his men, with his soldiers, rather than living in his luxurious mansion like a general. He went and stayed at the campsite with his men because he was so scared of his wife. Now, when his underlings, when his warriors heard about that, they felt very angry. They were like, look, you are one of the greatest general in the world. We fight Japanese, we fight Mongols, we fight anybody that dare to look at us cross-eyed. We are not scared of anybody. How can you be scared of a woman? And Qi Ji Guang was like, you guys have no idea what that woman is like. And so one of his assistants came up with an idea. He said, look, maybe you have been with her for so long that she doesn't know that you are one of the greatest general, and she doesn't know that she need to respect you, and you are the husband, and she need to respect and fear you. And we need to get the fear of God into that woman. So I suggest that you tell her to come to the campsite and get her to come into your tent. And when she show up, there'll be 20 or 30 of us here, and we'll surround her. We'll have our swords and our spears. We'll pretend that we're going to threaten her. We're going to pretend we're going to hurt her. And we're going to make her fear men. Okay, when that's the way to do it. Okay, and after that she'll know that men should be feared, and she'll be a good wife after that. Qi Jiguang sort of had a brain fart at that moment, and he thought that the advisor had a good idea. So he said, "Yeah, you know what? Okay, yeah, maybe this will work. Maybe this is a good idea. Let's get my wife to come to my tent, and you guys all stay here and get your spears and your swords and axes ready, and look mean, and look fierce, and when she come in, scare the holy crap out of her. I would love to see that woman tremble in her shoes." Well, it didn't actually work out the way they thought it would, because uh, they sent a messenger to get his wife, Wang, and when Wang showed up at the tent, she walked into the tent, and upon entering the tent, she saw 20 or 30 men, warriors in armors and with their swords and spears and axes. And she just looked at them and she's like, "What the hell are you guys doing? Where's that loser husband of mine?" And the moment she looked at them, none of the men dared to meet her eyes, and none of the men dared to meet her gaze. And this was when Qi Jiguang came out from behind his desk and bowed to her, and he said, "Oh, I'm so glad that you decided to come today. Look, if you weren't doing anything, if you're not busy, I just thought that I get you here to show my men how to use their weapon. That's why they have their armors and weapons here, because they all want to train and learn from you." So, yeah, this totally didn't go the way Qi Jiguang and his men thought it was going to. And this was not even the only story of Qi Jiguang and how fearful he was of his wife. Uh, Another story went that when Qi Jiguang was 40 years old, he had a mistress. And the one thing about Qi Jiguang's wife, Wang, was even though she was a very accomplished martial artist and all that, she was unable to conceive. Now, if you know your Chinese history, then you know that in Chinese culture, being without a child is one of the greatest sin. Like if you were married, not being able to conceive, it was taboo. It was not okay. And so, in desperation, Qi Jiguang decided to find a mistress, and very soon this mistress was pregnant. When Qi Jiguang's wife Wang found out about this, she was pissed. And the story went that Qi Jiguang, when he found out that she was pissed, he didn't dare go home. He hid out in the city, moving from inns to inns, hotel to hotels, trying to avoid her. And for days, Wang hunted around for him, went around the city with a sword in her hand, just looking for him. Finally, after almost a week, Qi Jiguang decided he couldn't hide out forever for the rest of his life. So he went home to confront his wife, but before he walked into the house, he put his armor under his clothes. He put his armor on and then put his clothes over his armor and then walked into the house. And then as soon as he saw his wife, he fell down to his knees and hugged her around her legs and begged her to forgive him, explained to her that he didn't have a mistress because he was horny. It wasn't because he didn't love her anymore. None of that. It's because, as a famous general, it's his duty to have a son, and because they were not unable to conceive, and he was desperate, and he had to have a son. And please forgive him. Please don't kill him. Uh, he begged for almost an hour before his wife finally forgave him. So yeah, Qi Jiguang, one of the greatest Chinese general, Chinese warriors of all time, falling down on his knees, begging his wife to forgive him. This was a guy who was living in fear of his wife because of how great a martial artist his wife was. Now we come to the second kind of fearing of your scared of your wife. The second kind of pussy whip. This is fear due to respect. Okay, this in this case, it's not as traumatic as that first one. You're not scared of them because of what they can do to you or what their family can do to you. You're scared of them because you genuinely respect your wife and what she has done. I think a lot of people, um, especially people who have had children, I have heard them say, "Well, she is the mother of my children." So in cases like that, it's a good example of fear out of respect uh, when you are obedient towards your wife. Uh, we can find an example in this one from the Qing dynasty, the last dynasty in Chinese history. There was a governor of the Shandong province in China. One day, when the governor had a great feast and gathered all his advisors and men around him, this minister, uh, his name was Zhang Yao. Zhang Yao, minister, governor of Shandong, he asked his men when they came to the feast. He asked his men and advisor. He said, "Are you guys scared of your wives?" Well, this kind of sounded like a trick question, right? So, I mean, a lot of them were thinking, well, shit, my boss is asking if I'm scared of my wife. Obviously, I can't say yes. I have to say no, because I got to look badass in front of my boss. So all his men basically said, no, 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 you're just a woman. Why would you be scared of a woman? Well, I'm not scared of my wife, and all that stuff. To their surprise, Governor Zhang Yao looked at them with pity in his eyes, and he shook his head and he said, "See, this is why I'm the governor, and you guys are just underlings. Because if you can't even respect and fear your wife, you'll never get anywhere. Let me tell you my story." And this is a story that we are going to tell today of Zhang Yao and his wife Kuai. Zhang Yao, before he became the governor of Shandong province, he was a lowly soldier in the Qing army. But he was a really good soldier. He vanquished a lot of enemy forces and he was a good leader of men. So he rose up quickly through the ranks in the army. When he was going up in rank, his wife, Kuai, who was a very accomplished scholar, and this was rare because most of the time women were not encouraged to go to school, but Kuai was different. She was very smart. Uh, so Kuai told Zhang Yao, her husband, she said, uh, "You look like you are going to end up in some high position, so you should really look into learning how to read and write. You should do some schooling." Now, Zhang Yao, for most of his life until then, was just a soldier. He was a warrior. He knew his way around horses and bow and arrow and swords and spears. He didn't know how to read. He didn't even know how to write his name. So he said to his wife, I'll do all the killing and you do all the writing. That's good enough for me. I don't need to learn how to read and write. Well, he was so good at his job that eventually the emperor wanted to make him the governor of Shandong. But because he didn't know how to read and write, he was unable to accept the post. He was unable to be the governor because, to be the governor, you can't be illiterate. You have to, especially in Qing Dynasty, where scholars were viewed to be more important than warriors, you have to know how to read and write. So even though the emperor wanted to make him the governor, he was unable to fit the post. So Zhang Yao was very sad. So he went home and said to Kuai, his wife, he said, "I I need you to teach me how to read and write. Uh, Otherwise, I can't be governor." And Kuai told him, "See, I told you years ago that you should learn how to read and write, and you didn't want to listen to me. Now, look, you have now we have to do this the hard way. I can teach you if you want, but you have to go through the ceremony of uh, uh, becoming my student. You have to uh, 拜师. It's a Chinese word, means you have to go through the whole ceremony of acknowledging I am your teacher, which means you got to do it in front of everybody, get down on your knees, and call me your teacher, and acknowledge that you will do everything I tell you to. Uh, well, Zhang Yao was like, "Come on, you're my wife. We don't have to do this. You can just teach me." And his wife said, "Well, I guess you'll never be governor then." And Zhang Yao went, "No, no, 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 okay, 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 fine, fine. If that's the way you want it, fine. I'll gather the men. I'll have them witness me getting down on my knee and tell everybody you're my teacher. Happy now?" And the wife said, "Yeah, okay." So from that day on, his wife Kuai started teaching him in art and music and poetry and how to write articles and stuff like that. And whenever Zhang Yao would feel like being lazy and didn't want to do his homework, and didn't want to uh, learn anymore, she would take a bamboo cane and beat the crap out of him, and he didn't dare say anything because he went through the ceremony. But now she's not only his wife, she's literally his teacher, his sensei, his sifu. Okay? So it's perfectly okay for her to beat him. And this was why Kuai wanted him to go through the ceremony and be witnessed by everybody. Because if he just want to be her husband, if she's just his wife, if he say, I hate this crap. I don't want to learn anymore. I don't want to do my homework. I don't want to learn this. There's nothing she could do to him. There's nothing she could do to enforce her teaching. But because now he was her student, she could legitimately beat him, humiliate him, yell at him, and punish him when he showed that he wasn't being a good student. A couple of years later, Zhang Yao, due to his hard work and Kuai's hard work, finally learned how to read and write very, very well, and he was finally able to become the governor of Shandong province. This was why, when he told his men, he said, "Without my wife forcing me to learn, beating me with bamboo cane, and shaming me with her words, I would never have been able to be where I am today. So this is why you need to learn to be scared of your wife, because your wife will be able to get you to go to high places." So in this case, we have a clear example of being fearful or scared of his wife, clearly out of the respect of what she has done for him. Now we come to the last type of being pussy whipped, probably the most kind, uh, comforting one. It's fear out of love. In this case, you are scared of your girlfriend or your wife because you love them. Okay, and I think this is the best kind. Right? You fear them. You don't want to make them angry. You don't want to make them sad because you love them. Right? And this was shown clearly in the case of the greatest minister of Tang Dynasty, Minister Fang of the Tang Dynasty. Now, Minister Fang and his wife Lu was very famous for their couple dynamic. Unfortunately, even though Minister Fang was the greatest minister of royal minister of the entire Tang dynasty. He was also said to be probably the most pussy-whipped minister of the entire Chinese history. Uh, the story goes that there was one time when the emperor Li Shimin of Tang Dynasty, Emperor Li, when Emperor Li came out of his office, he saw Minister Feng hanging out outside the palace, just wandering aimlessly around, and it was already nearing the end of the day. And Emperor Li was really perplexed, and he said, "Why are you still here? I thought we finished our meeting like hours ago. I thought you went home. How come you're still here?" And the minister said to the emperor, "Your Majesty, uh, I said something to my wife this morning that angered her, and I don't want to go home when she's still angry. Can you send a royal decree ordering her to forgive me, and then I can go home?" And Emperor Li thought this was like the most ridiculous thing that he had ever heard. Like, you're a man, okay? Be a man. If a woman is angry, beat her up. Show her who's the boss. Why are you? Yeah, okay. You know what? I am going to help you. I'm going to teach you, show you how to be a man. I'm going to sort out your marriage difficulty. Well, the emperor, his way of solving the problem was very strange. He decided to grant five of the most beautiful women in his entourage to become uh, Minister Feng's uh, concubine or mistresses. So he granted these women to Minister Fang and said, "Take them home, okay? Take them home. They'll treat you like how women should treat men, and they'll show your wife how to be a proper woman." And Minister Fang was like, "No, no, 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 I can't. Okay, no, 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 no. Thank you, Your Majesty, but no, I can't take these women home." Uh, and, and the emperor was like, "Look, you don't mean that. You don't mean that. Right? Any man would not say no to these beautiful women. So obviously you're just saying no because you think that your wife will uh, object. So tell you what, I am going to get your wife to come here, and I'm going to get her to accept these women in front of everybody. I'm the emperor. I can do anything I want." So Emperor Li ordered his escort to go get uh, minister's wife, Lu, and bring Lu to the palace to be to see the emperor. So when Lu showed up at the palace, the emperor said to her, "Listen, woman, your husband is the greatest minister in the world, and because of all the hard work he's done for me, I want to reward him with these five beautiful women so they can be in his bed. They can make him happy because obviously you can't make him happy, right?" And he said, he said, "You won't agree to it. As your emperor, I am ordering you to agree to it." To his surprise, and to everybody's surprise, Lu, the minister's wife, said, "I'm sorry, Your Majesty, but first, it it's not really my decision. It's up to my husband. But even if it were up to me, I would never agree to it. You are the emperor. You have no right interfering in our marriage." That made the emperor really, really angry, and he ordered his men to bring her a glass of poisoned wine. And he said, "Woman, I am your emperor. What I say is the law. If you want to defy me, then drink this poisoned wine and be done with it. The hell with you." The emperor and everybody watching thought that the woman would fall down upon her knee and beg for her life and say, okay, okay, I'm okay with my husband taking these women home. No, Lu didn't do that. Lu didn't even miss a beat. She just drank that cold glass down. She just emptied that glass, and the emperor was dumbfounded. And he turned and said to the minister, Feng, he said, "Oh my God, okay, I'm sorry, dude. Now I totally understand why you're scared of this lady. I am scared of her too." Luckily for Lu, luckily for the minister, lucky for everyone involved, the emperor was not a monster. So the wine he gave her was not actually poisoned. It was a cup of wine vinegar. So she was okay. But keep this part in mind because we'll come back to it near the end of the video. Uh, what she drank was not poisoned wine, was vinegar. Uh, So afterward, the emperor and the other ministers asked Fang, "Why are you so dedicated to your wife? She's not even that good looking, and she's half blind. On top of that, uh, yeah, I failed to mention in the beginning of the story. The minister's wife Lu, she has a disfigured face, and her one eye was blind. So the emperor was like, "Why are you so dedicated to that ugly woman? It doesn't make sense." And the minister Fang said, "Your Majesty, this is because of our great love, because of her devotion to me, her love to me. When I was a young scholar, before I became the minister, I there was one time when I became really, really sick, and I thought I was going to die. So I said to my wife Lu, who was young and beautiful, I said to Lu, I don't think I'm going to make it. If I die, don't grieve for me for too long. You are young and beautiful. I'm okay if you go and find a new husband after I die." But after I told her that, Lu grabbed a dagger and disfigured her own face and poked out one of her own eye. And she said to me, "See, now I'm ugly. So even if you die, no one's going to want me. I'm yours forever. You better not die." And that's how I was able to make it and become your minister in the end. So when she showed me that kind of devotion, I'm scared of her because I'm scared of hurting her feeling. I never want to hurt her. So you see, in this case, it's fear. He's deadly scared of his wife, but not because of her temper, not because of her connection or her martial art or her ability to be a scholar and teach him anything. This was because he feared to hurt her feeling because of that deep devotion and love between the two of them. Now, before we end today's video, let me quickly go back to the vinegar. In Mandarin, a lot of time when a woman or when someone is jealous, the Mandarin word for jealous, feeling jealous is 吃醋,吃醋. 我吃醋, I'm jealous. 你吃醋了吗? Are you jealous? 吃醋, 吃 means eat, like in 吃饭. 醋, chu, means vinegar. Why is jealous eating vinegar? It all came from the story of when Lu was given that supposedly poisoned wine, and it turned out to be vinegar. And she rather drink that poisoned wine rather than agreeing to let her husband have other women in his bed. So 吃醋,it all came from the minister's wife, Lu. I hope you guys enjoyed this very lengthy episode, and I'll see you guys again tomorrow in Toy Thursday with Johnny Tiger. For now, 谢谢 and 再见。